Picture the scene. It's 1997, The Simpsons is still good, and the economy is booming, and the world doesn't appear to be ending. And little do you know, you're about to receive two of the best games released on the PlayStation 1. I'm talking, of course, about Abe's Oddysee and Final Fantasy VII. Now on the surface, these games could not be further apart. One, a cult favourite platformer, with a grim and gritty tone. The other, perhaps the most famous JRPG of all time, a planet-spanning, epic adventure. However, they are united by one thing, one core idea. Capitalism, bad. And no, I will not be explaining that further. Okay, fine. Let's dig into it. So let's start with a brief plot synopsis of each. In Abe's Oddysee, we play, surprisingly, as Abe, a Mudokon and former Employee of the Month at the Rupture Farms meat processing plant. Working late, he uncovers that due to dwindling profits and sources of meat, he and his fellow workers are next on the chopping block. Abe escapes from the plant, rescuing the Mudokons, and breaks out into the wilderness. Here, he discovers the remnants of indigenous Mudokon culture, and through completing their trials, obtains the power to free his people. In Final Fantasy VII, the protagonist is Cloud, former soldier for the Shinra Electric Power Company, a world-dominating organization. Working as a mercenary, Cloud joins with the eco-terrorist group Avalanche, who seek to destroy Shinra's Mako reactors that are draining the life force of the planet. However, they soon discover a bigger threat to the planet, Sephiroth, the last remnant of Shinra's super soldier program. So, Cloud and his party of eco-terrorists, indigenous warriors, and corporate whistleblowers set off to put a stop to his plans, and thwart Shinra at the same time. In both games, as in real life, anti-capitalist sentiment and action is deeply entwined with environmentalism. Capitalism is destroying the planet to line pockets, driving animals into extinction, and creating heinous levels of inequality. Now, which game am I talking about? Environmentalism has a longer history than we realise, even when just focusing on modern Western history. For example, the warming effect of carbon dioxide on the planet was first noted by Eunice Newton Foote in 1856. However, it wasn't until 1997 that we saw a global commitment to reduce CO2 levels, in the form of the Kyoto Protocols. I wonder why Eunice's work was ignored for so long. The 90s were an interesting time for the environmental movement. Not only did we see the adoption of the Kyoto Protocols, but famous acts of protest, like Julia Butterfly Hill's tree sit-in, and the non-violent campaigns against Shell of Ken Saro-Wiwa in Nigeria. The environmental movement was truly global at this point. The start of the decade had seen the 20th anniversary of Earth Day, with over 60% of Americans strongly in support of the event. It was remarked in 1995 that the environmental movement is one of the most successful social movements of the 20th century. While support for environmentalism was at an all-time high, so was the need for it. Those protests weren't happening for no reason, and pushback on protesters was often fatal. In 1998, David Chain, an anti-logging protester, was killed by a tree felled by the same company he was protesting. The case was settled out of court. And Ken Saro-Wiwa? Well, he was tragically arrested and executed by his government, with witnesses from the trial later coming forward to admit they had been bribed. And it was not just protesters who were suffering. At the close of the decade, we also saw the Earth's population exceed 6 billion for the first time, with UN agencies noting that the poor are becoming poorer in both absolute and relative terms. These are the global circumstances under which both of these games were made, and we can see these influences permeating every inch of them. In Abe's Oddysee, the disparity between the ruling and working classes is clear, distinct, and violently enforced. The Gluckons are presented as almost caricature capitalists, defined entirely by their large cigars and their tailored suits. They rule with brutal efficiency, their slick guards crushing dissent lethally. The Mudokons, in contrast, wear just a loincloth and work in filthy, blood-covered surroundings, often inches from machines or devices that could kill them in a second. Even speech is taken from them, the workers' mouths sewn shut. Shinra are more subtle, though no less brutal in their oppression. The capital city of Midgar is a modern and inviting place to live, electricity powering cars, skyscrapers, and theatres. On the plates, at least. Midgar is literally a city of two tiers. Whilst the wealthy live a life of luxury, the poor live literally far below, in slums on the barren earth, the land drained of all of its life. Junon is similarly split, with the new build having destroyed the fishing industry that once dominated the town. Yet despite the disparity, neither rich nor poor are spared the company's wrath. One of the pivotal moments of the game sees the company dropping the Sector 7 plate in an attempt to try and wipe out Avalanche, killing those unlucky enough to be caught either above or below. Shinra's violence is not only physical, but societal, destroying the cultures that once bound people together. Midgar was built over 8 old towns, all with their own unique names and history. But that was the past. This is seen once again in Wutai, who since Shinra's conquest have seen their culture and homes become a parody of themselves, the tourist trap of Orientalism and faded glory. And perhaps the most egregious example, Nibelheim, Cloud's hometown once destroyed, but since rebuilt and populated solely by Shinra's employees and actors, filling the roles of the dead. In Oddysee 2, we see our protagonist is unaware of their own background, the identity of his people completely erased. They don't need that to work. Even the few scant areas where his people live free are still patrolled by the brutal slick guards. In order to escape their oppression, both games see their protagonists venturing out into a wider and wilder world, searching for the power to save others. Though even the wilds are tainted by the touch of corporations, we still see a world more in touch with nature. Homes carved out of shells, temples in mountains and hidden in forests. These places are the remnants of lost indigenous cultures, left empty. It is through reconnecting with these cultures, and through the nature and the planet, that our heroes are able to complete their quests and accomplish their goals. The Cetra in Final Fantasy had a special connection to the Lifestream. That is, the life force that powers everything. They are able to use it to talk to the planet. This gives them powers that others cannot explain. They were custodians of the planet, able to heal and cultivate it. At the close of the game, it is the influence of Aerith, last of the Cetra, that is able to compel the Lifestream to come together and prevent Meteor from destroying the planet. Similarly, in Oddysee, Abe is guided by the shamanistic Big Head to complete the Scrab and Paramite trials of his people. This gives him the power to transform into the demigod Shukul, a combination of the two. Ironic, considering Abe's affinity with Scrab cakes and Paramite pies. He uses this power to destroy the board of directors, and, in the good ending, the Mudokons he saved use their meditation powers to rescue Abe from certain death. Both the Cetra and Mudokons share coding and parallels with real-life cultures. Lorne Lanning compares the Mudokons to pre-colonial American cultures, and similar coding can be seen with the Cetra's Temple of the Ancients. We can also draw comparisons to the Israelite, with Abe drawing inspiration, and indeed his name, from the biblical Abraham. The Cetra have similar coding, with Shinra's end goal seeking to colonize the Cetra's promised land, the last untainted corner of their world. These comparisons help to reinforce in the audience's mind the impression that has occurred, whilst helping us understand their spirituality by connecting it to real-world examples. The themes in these games are easy to see. Capitalism and its relentless push for more is erasing cultures, corrupting the planet, forcing wildlife into extinction, and severing people's connection to their spirituality. These games are explicitly, deeply political, and not subtle about it. They are games of their time, tied tightly to when they were made and what was happening in the world. It is no wonder then that in the last 7 years both have received remakes, but that's probably a topic for another video. These remakes tackle the stories once more, bringing their message to a whole new generation. This message is needed now more than ever. It feels like so little progress has been made in the last 20 years, and any that has been accompanied with a massive slide backwards. But I believe that this new audience is more ready to hear that message than any that has come before. Hi everyone, thank you for watching the video. This is actually a re-upload of my first ever video with much improved audio. I want this channel to be a space where we can look at the stories that have influenced us growing up, be they video games, movies, television, any format, and help analyse why they're important to us and what they really mean. If that sounds interesting to you, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.